And welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Season 2, Episode 8 of The Boys, What I Know. So, this video will cover the season finale of The Boys Season 2, so if you haven't seen it, you haven't seen up to the very end of it, then you will not want to watch this video, otherwise I will spoil some things for you, which will not be fun. It will literally spoil the episode. So, anyway, love this episode. Thought it was a great finale. I thought it really justified Season 2 as a whole. I like the mix of character-based stuff and sort of huge action set pieces that push the plot forward. I thought there was a good mix between them. It didn't get too plot heavy or too sort of bogged down, but it didn't get, on the other hand, like I think maybe the last week's episode was perhaps a little bit too bogged down in the character moments and dragged for a bit, whereas this handled it much better. It had the mix of it much better, because I love, one thing I will say I thought Season 2 was better at than Season 1 is character development. Particularly those, the characters of the boys, the non-superhero characters. I think that the Season 2 did a much better job of developing these characters and even push forward some of the superhero characters as well. So, that was great. But this episode saw a lot of really powerful revelations, which I thought were amazing. I thought everything in this episode really, really worked. So, at the start of the episode, we see Homelander and Stormfront with Ryan, and they're trying to sort of be his parents. And what I thought would happen, happened, which I actually love, because it made all the sense in the world, is that Ryan got over his initial shock of having his mother lying to him his whole life, and missed her and wanted to go back to it. And that's exactly what I thought would happen, because that makes all the sense in the world. To me, it made all the sense in the world, because this is like a Truman Show situation where his entire life is a lie. He finds that out, so I wasn't surprised, and I think it totally fits that he would do something as rash as to just run away from his mom and push her away and say, "I don't like you." But I knew that euphoria would wear off. And if it didn't, then I would say it's bad character development. But it did. So the show writers know what they're doing, and it made total sense that the initial shock would wear off, and he starts to see Homelander and Stormfront for who they really are. Like, he doesn't really know who this Stormfront character is, and she keeps trying to like push herself onto him. Like, he doesn't hate her or anything, but he's kind of like, he's not sold on her either. And the scene when they go into Vault World or whatever it was pretty interesting, when he gets overwhelmed by huge crowds, because he's never been in huge crowds before, so that makes total sense. And Homelander was actually, I feel he had like this fatherly love, and that's what makes this show so interesting and so complex, because he does. And I think it's genuine, and I think he could relate to Ryan. And in fact, he does relate a story, and he kind of has this bonding moment with him. And I love the complexity of the show that they can do that, but still make it very clear that ultimately Homelander is a sociopath and should not be raising Ryan under any circumstances whatsoever. But he still loves him and can relate to him, and I love the complexity of that. And as was predictable, and as I saw in the preview for this episode, Becca went running to Billy Butcher for help to get Ryan back. And then I like how Becca hangs out with the boys and sort of bonds with them, which I thought was really cute. I thought the whole reaction, like Frenchie and Mother's Milk and Huey's, the whole reaction to her was really funny. How they were like, oh, and being like really, especially when she had a tender moment with Billy, and they were all like, oh, and Billy's just like, fuck off, cunts. I love that. Really great stuff. Really good character stuff there. I like that I like that Starlight's hanging out with the boys. I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit. I'm disappointed that at the end of the episode she's back in the 7 because I really like the dynamic of her being with the boys. I kind of wish they stuck with that longer. And she sends her mother away, which I like because I hate this character. So that's good. You don't have to kill her off. Just say, go to Arizona or wherever and be safe. Fine. Just get her off my damn screen. Anyway. And so, as far as Black Noir went, because this is a question I was asking after last week's episode. It didn't seem like anyone else was asking this question. Is he dead? And if he's not dead, wouldn't he just tell everyone that Maeve killed him or tried to kill him? And Maeve would be in deep shit. But we got actually a very clever workaround that, a very clever answer, because to me that was like there's only two scenarios. Either he's dead or Queen Maeve's in deep shit. But they found a third workaround, which I thought was very clever, where he's not dead. He's just in a coma or incapacitated or whatever. But by the end of the episode, they kind of resolve their differences between blackmail or whatever, where Queen Maeve is back in the 7 and Starlight's forgiven. So now they can have Black Noir wake up, so not be dead. But now the stuff with Queen Maeve is already resolved, so she won't be in deep shit. So even if Black Noir does tell them what she did. Granted, their relationship will be shot, which could make things pretty interesting, if and when he does wake up. So, Huey and Starlight go to Queen Maeve to try to convince her. The scene went down pretty much as I would suspect it would. I was almost hoping that she would somehow, the airplane footage would be brought up and Huey and Starlight would use that. But then I thought what they actually ended up doing with the airplane footage was much better at the end. So I'm glad that actually did withhold. So there were actually, this is kind of a, stereotypical plot point you see in a lot of films and TV episodes where, someone goes to this fallen hero character who's like done wrong and really down on their luck and try to convince them to stick up for the good guys, and they refuse. But then later at the end of the movie or at the end of the episode, they come around and they do the right thing. So that was kind of, to be fair, that I wouldn't say I predicted it, because when Queen Maeve showed up at the very end, I was a little, maybe a tinge surprised. But then once I realized what was happening, I was like, you know what? Actually, that makes sense. I should have suspected this all along. It's kind of obvious that they were going to do this. But anyway, so yeah, stuff starts to get really into it. Now, let me talk about why I love, one of the reasons anyway, why I love this episode so much, is I love Billy Butcher's storyline. I think it made sense for his character. It fit with his character. It was the moral ambiguity of the character, and that's why I love this character so much. He's not a good guy. He's not a hero. He's not a bastion of moral good. He's a cunt, to use his terms. And yet you kind of root for him most of the time, but he's got that dark side to him where it makes sense for him to do something that the audience would find despicable, which what happens in this episode. And I love that scene between him and Edgar's. And again, it goes right with his character, with his prejudice that has been established about Soups, and that he doesn't like Ryan because he's a Soup and he wants to get Becca away and keep her for himself, which makes a lot of sense. So he makes a deal with the devil. And again, I totally bought this, but I also totally bought his decision not to do it. And that's why I love this episode. I think it's probably maybe the best thing about this episode, which makes this one of my favorite episodes of the entire show. In fact, I would say that's probably one of my favorite moments of the entire show, is when Billy Butcher changed his mind. When he saw the love that Becca had. And also, like, Becca earlier made him promise to reunite him with Ryan. And you could tell the look on his face. And, like, everything he's been through with, like, bonding with Starlight. And this kind of softened his position on Soups. and his actually seeing Becca again and looking her in the face, seeing the love that she and Ryan shared. I think in that moment, I could see how he just couldn't bring himself to do it. In fact, not only did he not do it, he told Becca to take Ryan and get as far away from him as possible because that he was a cunt and he couldn't be trusted, and he was so angry at himself for just because he was about to do what he was about to do. So that was amazing. I thought that worked extremely well. And in the following sequence, like this whole second half of this episode, I thought was absolutely amazing. I thought it was done extremely well. Particularly like Homelander finding the vault people and hearing them say Billy Butcher's name and that they're looking for the kid, and he's just like, "Where's my son?" And the next thing you know, he's all covered, completely covered in blood. I love that. Of course, it's the typical, tone and kind of thing you would expect from the show. That, hey, what would this show be without it? Also, love the fight sequence when Stormfront showed up. That was pretty intense. I love the moment where Kimiko sort of signs to Frenchie that she's gonna... What did she say? Something about put her foot up her kitty. I love the fact that she just laughed and smiled, because that was a good resolution to this character's storyline, because we've had this all season where she was like enveloped with fear and vengeance, and whenever Stormfront showed up, she like froze, and she even said that she's like, "What if I freeze?" And Frenchie's like, "You're not gonna freeze." But here she just had a revelation where she just laughed and like, "I'm gonna kick your ass," and she does. And so they had this fight. Now let me admit something here, because I heard this fan theory which I hoped was true, and I was a bit disappointed that it wasn't true. That since we know Starlight's power is that she shoots electricity, but she actually channels electricity. Like, she doesn't, like Stormfront creates electricity, but Starlight needs to draw from power, like we saw in a couple episodes ago when they were out in the middle of nowhere. She had no electricity to draw from, so she couldn't use her powers. And Billy Butcher's like, "It was a bit shit power, isn't it?" So I heard this theory that that Starlight would draw from Stormfront's power, and that would make her even more powerful because she could channel her power. And I was disappointed they didn't do that. I was hoping that when Stormfront like shocked Starlight, that she would wake up like completely charged and go poof, and explode and just fuck Stormfront up. Now they didn't do it that way because they wanted to save Stormfront for the reveal later on, but I was just disappointed. To me, that makes total sense that their powers would work that way, but whatever. I love the scene. Queen Maeve shows up, and they start Queen Maeve and Starlight and Kimiko just beating the shit out of Stormfront. And I love Frenchie's like, "Oh, girls really do get it done," because I love it. It's a twist on, because that in the previous episode when they were doing that film and they were like, "Girls get it done," or whatever, it was really cheesy and pandering, and the kind of bullshit corporatization of feminism that Vault always does, that kind of bullshit. And I love how they did a twist on, because here it was gritty. Like they were just like she was on the ground, they were just kicking the shit out of her, which is not like a superhero thing to do. It's not like a moral thing to do, and it was more rough. And I love how Frenchie just called it back, and because that all the superheroes there that were attacking the Stormfront were all women, and the men weren't superheroes, so they could just sit back and shoot their guns, which did nothing to her. But that was an interesting twist on that trope. So I loved it, and I loved the music they played while they beat her ass, and it was such a cathartic moment because Stormfront was a Nazi. And I skipped over the fact where they revealed to the public that she was a Nazi, and I love that. I loved her downfall. This was very satisfying for me as a viewer. It was very cathartic. But she flies away, and she has a confrontation with Billy Butcher and Becca, which I'm a bit disappointed that. I suppose none of the other characters can fly, so it took Queen Maeve a while to catch up to her. Because we don't know how far away Billy Butcher got, which is quite a shame. And you have the confrontation where Ryan kills he not kills, but he fucks up Stormfront, like completely lays her. Like first, Becca stabs her in the eye, which is apparently shout out to the comic books, which fine, whatever. And but then, because they kind of preambled this earlier in the episode with Stormfront trying to get Ryan to, and Homelander trying to get Ryan to laser eye this Toy of the Deep, and I love how it's a Toy of the Deep. I'm sure that wasn't a coincidence. And he wouldn't do it because she's like, and they're trying to tell him, they're like, channel your anger, and he's like, channel your hate, and he's like, I don't really hate anyone though. But here in this moment, like, he hated Stormfront because she was trying to kill his mother, and so he laser-eyed her, but in doing so, ended up killing his mother by accident, which is very, very tragic. But, you could say that, and they mentioned several times in this episode that, he's the one that killed Becca, but Becca was about to die. I mean, she was if he did nothing, she still would be dead. So that wouldn't have changed anything. But instead, he ended up fucking Stormfront all the fuck up, which is a huge compliment. Now, granted, she's not dead, but like both her legs were chopped off. She was like a burned skeleton, like Anakin Skywalker type. So yeah, that's a very good thing. But it's bad that he has to live with the trauma of being the one responsible for ending his mother's life. But his mother, Becca, of course, forgives him and begs with Billy Butcher with their dying breath that it wasn't his fault and that he's a good person. Now, I was a bit worried in this scene, in this moment, and I'm still not sure I'm completely satisfied with the way they played it, because after Becca dies, they show Billy Butcher with this picking up the crowbar slowly with this like look of absolute hatred and vengeance pointed at Ryan's way. And I was like, no, please don't. Because to me, this would be a moment kind of like the whole Iron Man trying to kill Captain America in Civil War thing, which I thought was total bullshit and didn't buy for a second. And this, to me, would have been just as bad. Because although, from a simple, very simple-minded, very, very simple, non-complicated, surface-level interpretation, you could say, well, the boy killed his love, Becca, so he would want to kill her. But first of all, as I said, Stormfront was going to kill her anyway, if he didn't intercede. And secondly, she just begged him, said that Ryan's a good person, begged him to take care of him, and made him promise to take care of him. Now, for him to just go and defy his love's dying wish like that and do the exact opposite, do exactly what he knows 100% she would not want, I think that would be total bullshit, regardless of how much of a cunt Billy Butcher is or how much of an asshole he is. There's no way that would be within his character, because he loves Becca. He would never betray her outright. And not just betray her, but betray her to such, like, the absolute worst extreme he possibly could betray her. So I don't buy that for his character. So I was happy when he didn't do that. But I think by having him give Ryan that really nasty look, it kind of makes his next action seem inconsistent with that nasty look. Because he picks up the crowbar, he's ready to kill Ryan, but then Homelander shows up, so now all of a sudden he's ready to give his life to protect Ryan. That seems like a huge turn. It seems like this scene would have flowed better had they just left that whole crowbar nasty look thing out. It would have went straight into please protect him. It was his dying wish of his loved one, and then Homelander shows up, and so he does that. He protects Ryan with his life because that was his lover's dying wish. Makes perfect sense. The whole angry look crowbar, I feel like it was kind of a contrivance there just to throw you off and make you think, oh no, he's going to hurt the boy, but then he ends up helping him. Like, yeah, so that annoyed me, if I'm being honest. But I did love what came next, how he did stick up for Ryan. Homelander's like, okay, well, I'm just going to laser you. But then Queen Maeve shows up and uses the blackmail footage, and that actually worked a lot better than I thought it would. When we first teased this earlier in the season, I thought, oh well, Queen Maeve is dead, but I think the way that she did it and they accomplished it, and the way they explained it, like, I love the scene, the way they explain how Homelander, and this is something that the whole season made extremely clear, is that the most important thing to Homelander is his love, because, and this makes sense, they really did a good job of developing this character because it made it clear that he was never loved as a child, which has stunted his growth, and it created this unhealthy need to be loved as an adult. So he needs to be loved. And I love how when he threatened Maeve, he's like, oh yeah, go ahead, show the evidence, I'll just destroy everything. She's like, fine, but as long as no one ever loves you ever again. And they played the audio track of all the crowds cheering for him, and you could see just how important it was. And I think they described this, the actors described this in interviews as Homelander's Achilles heel, like his main, because every like superpower, invincible superhero figure or villain, like Superman or what have you, they all need their kryptonite. They need something that is their vulnerable spot. And with Homelander, it's his overwhelming need to be loved. And so I love that. I love that. That's how they defeated him. They exploited his weakness to be loved. And so he backed off. Not only did he back off, but he also welcomed Maeve and Starlight back into the Seven. He's like, I'm so glad, because you can tell in that scene when they had the press conference that he didn't give a shit about Maeve betraying or Starlight betraying. He was just so happy to be loved and be back in the spotlight and be the hero again. So he's like, oh yeah, sure, I'm so great, we have a great working relationship, because he doesn't give a fuck about them. Either way, he's not, his desire to get revenge on them for whatever, he doesn't really care about that. He just wants to be loved. And of course, this is follow up in the ending scene where he's masturbating over the city, which again is the kind of twisted thing you come to expect from the show. And of course, what would this show be without those kind of scenes? Anyway, yeah, so I thought the ending scene with Billy Butcher and Ryan was very touching, and it makes a lot of sense that he wouldn't raise him himself because that's not his style, but he sort of imparted the love of his mother and gave him that medallion, and sort of vouched for him with Mallory, saying, look, Becca said that thought that he would actually turn out good. So he's got to believe in her because he believes in Becca. So that was a really touching scene. I did like that. We also got Huey had with this conversation with Starlight and how he's saying he needs to stand on his own 2 feet. And I love this. I love how Starlight's like, okay, well, that's fine. She was hurt, and she's like, we can just be friends. He's like, no, I'm going to cling on to you. I'm not a moron. Like, I love that. That was great. But he was actually talking about Billy Butcher and how he was going to leave the boys and work for Congressman Newman. Now, also, another thing, which I'm not sure how I feel about this. Before I get to that, we also see, like, everyone sort of, I'll get to this now. So, I don't know how I feel about this, but they said, like, the charges have been dropped on Billy Butcher and the boys, and Mallory is going to officially work for Newman, who's going to be the new czar, who sort of internal affairs that polices superheroes, and they want Billy Butcher to join as an off-the-books sort of team, and it's basically having the boys, but in a more official capacity. So throughout the show, they've been vigilantes, they've been outlaws, but now they're going to be more like officially sanctioned, but more like a Black Ops kind of team where it's not that official. Which is apparently what they were in the timeline of the show before the first episode first began. And I don't know. I kind of gotten used to it kind of feels like almost a resolution. I know it's not a full resolution. I know there's a lot of balls still in the air and a lot of things that still need to be resolved. But it kind of feels like the main driving force that really had me on the edge of my seat and really kept me tuning into the next episode was the fact that the boys were vigilantes and they were in such bad situation and they had to prove themselves. And now it seems like they have. So it kind of feels like if they ended the show right here, I wouldn't be too upset, to be honest. Of course, they're not going to, and I'm glad. I do want to see more episodes, but it seems kind of like season 3 is going to have to reinvent itself, which is fine. I mean, The Expanse has pretty much done this as well, because that had a long, ongoing storyline for the first 2 seasons that resulted in the middle of season 3, and it had to reinvent itself in the second half of season 3 and season 4. So that's fine. It's just I just miss it. I just don't know how I feel about it. Like, I kind of miss the fact that vigilantes, and I'm going to miss that now they've kind of all been resolved because Mother's Milk can go back to his family, which I didn't expect that to happen, and Kimiko and Frenchie are now in love, and they go out and go dancing, so everything's peachy with them, so it seems almost like a happy ending for them. So I have mixed feelings about that. Like, it makes me satisfied, it's a good ending, but it seemed to happen a little bit too easy, like all I had to do was blackmail Homelander. Yeah, I guess it did do a bit more than that, but still, I don't know. I would have liked to see this vigilante storyline stretch out a bit further, but it is going to be interesting having them do different things. So I think that's it for this episode. It was a really good episode. I'm not forgetting anything, am I? I don't think so. I think that's all the important things. So my rating I'm kidding, of course. We're going to talk about the big revelation at the end of the episode where we see who was popping the heads all season, and it was, in fact, Victoria Newman, Congresswoman Victoria Newman. And I gotta tell you, this shocked the hell out of me. I did not see this coming, and I love it. Now, in the previous video, I was speculating that it was the Church of the Common that were the ones doing the head popping because they happened to kill, Shockwave. But it turns out that was just a coincidence. And I love how they reveal it by having the head of the church, talking on the phone to Congresswoman Newman, and his head pops while he's drinking the Fresca. Like, as soon as he pops open the Fresca, his head pops. I love, the symmetry of that. It does make me think that this whole Church of Collective thing, because I wasn't that big on them at the start of the season, but I thought, maybe it's going to play a huge role. And ultimately they didn't, so they kind of now, in retrospect, do seem like my initial reaction of them being unnecessary and a waste of time was correct. But maybe they will play a new role in season 3. Maybe this is not the end of them. Maybe the Deep is going to take over as the leader. Wouldn't that be interesting? And that's another character who went nowhere this season. So they must justify the fact that they kept the Deep around in season 3. Otherwise, he's going to be another just side character they just couldn't get rid of. Now, A-Train, of course, did play a role because he's the one that gave the information out of storefront, and he's back in the 7. So that's a huge thing. But yeah, Newman, Congresswoman Newman, being a soup that popped heads. Now, I was correct though when I said it wasn't Cindy. I was very adamant it wasn't Cindy. So many people like thinking it was Cindy. I was like, no, but Cindy like explodes entire bodies, not just heads. I think that's important. And we still don't know, by the way, what happened to Cindy. So maybe she'll resurface because she never resurfaced. We saw her hitchhiking, so we gotta see her again in season 3. Like, we must. Otherwise, what's the point of showing her hitchhiking? I mean, don't say it was just to throw you off to make you think that she was the one popping heads, because we need a better reason than that. I'm sorry, we do. But anyway, yeah, so that's pretty shocking. It makes sense if you watch the scene in the hearing where everyone's head exploded in retrospect, because at first I didn't understand why Newman was not leaving. She was refusing to leave, and like they were playing it off like she was too scared and freaked out and that she froze, and Mallory had to literally drag her away. We know now that is because she wanted to keep popping heads. Because we do see that she does need to be in visual sight. And in fact, people were speculating, oh, I wonder if the person popping heads was in the room. And I was like, nah, not necessarily. But turns out, yeah, she was. So that was great. Now, I also love this kind of foreshadowing. When I can't remember who it was, if it was Newman herself or Homelander or Mallory or whoever, someone mentioned earlier in the episode that when they thought that Vought was the one, that Eggers was the one who exploded all the heads, they said, but someone like brought up the counter argument. It was like, well, some of his own people got killed, and the counter argument to that was, well, they had to do it to make it look so that people wouldn't suspect him, to make it look like it wasn't him, and that's exactly what Newman did. That's why, like, her chief of staff, whatever, had explode. And I don't think it was because she hated that person. I think she was just callous and doesn't care about life, and did it for the exact reason so people wouldn't suspect her. And it worked. I didn't suspect her. Now we don't know what her agenda is. I imagine it's tied to something big, maybe an unknown group. We know it's not the church because she exploded his head, but there's maybe some unknown yet unexplained villain factor, which is what makes me more excited for season 3, especially knowing that Huey is working for her now, and in fact the boys are going to be commissioned working for her, and she's actually the villain now. That's an interesting dynamic. I will grant you that. So I thought that ending was fucking amazing. That's just me. So anyway, for realsies now, my rating for what I know out of 10 is a 10, the best. I think this was like a perfect finale. It was great in character development. Like, all the characters like really worked. The storylines made sense, and that ending was fucking exciting. It was satisfying, and then you got that shocking revelation at the end, which blew my mind. Not as much as it did with the head of the church there, but it was a great setup for season 3 on top of that. So yeah, this is an amazing episode, one of the best of the show in my opinion. Absolutely loved it. So anyway, that is it for my review of the Boys season 2 finale. I shall be back in a week to give my overall thoughts of season 2 of The Boys, and I will be doing a live discussion video here on Enchantment of Eternity with some special guests in the coming week. I have yet to arrange that, so just keep your eyes peeled. I will make an announcement in the next week or two when that's going to be. So be sure to check out my channel, as I cover many other shows like Discovery, The Expanse, Star Trek, BoJack Horseman, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all that. And thanks a lot for watching.